for anyone who hasn't been to a Tinker Talk, I think everyone has been to a Tinker Talk except for maybe a couple of you. We get, experts that are either in marketing, because that is what y'all do, or that are helping with operations and running the business, because that is what we all do. So we have Lauren here today, and I'll have her give you a little bit more of a bio of her very impressive, amazing self. Yes, yeah, just brush that shoulder off.
That is how old I am, where I still do this and think
yes,
probably cool.
At least you're not flossing, right? Like, so we've got that going on. She's incredible. She really helps to understand kind of the brain at work. That's my very simple way of putting it. And I think for all of us who are in the digital age, who are managing, people across generations with different types of brains at work, both in present and both digitally, and how they show up in different communications tools, it's a huge honor to be able to have her here with us and just kind of ask her questions and see what everything is about. Kind of the setup is I'll go first, and then I'll take sort of my burning questions, and we'll open it up as an open chat to the group. Lauren, this is super chill. I tend to curse a lot, so just that's how it's very, very chill. Yes, I know, perfect, right? So just get all up in there. The idea is it's a very format where we just want to really get to know the things that most people are not willing to tell us. So that's kind of where we're at.
I could do that. As long as you're interested in neurodiversity, then I can tell you everything and anything that you ever wanted to know. So we will.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. And then just, and being super open and blanket, I think most of you know this, but for those who don't, Lauren actually diagnosed me last year, and I won all the letters. I was like, yes, I won them all, for ADHD and ASD, which is how I got to know her and her brilliance, and which I know I am such an overachiever, right? I was like, if I'm gonna take these tests, I'm gonna fucking ace them.
Exactly. Put them on the business card as extra initials after your name.
Yeah, I was like, that's just what we're gonna do. And so that's how, I, last year I spent a good amount of time and journey kind of into this deep dive of a topic, as we do. And, I'm just so excited to have her here. And the more I talk about it, the more that, people are sharing their own experiences and everything. So again, just completely open platform. So Lauren, one of my questions for you is, because we do process, right? And so we're like, okay, we're going to help people with their processes, right? And it's like the structure will set you free, but, in theory, but as you're, kind of fiddling with 20 million structures, how do you think structure works in an organization? And I'm going to ask you this from 2 points of view, right? From an employer standpoint, and then from an employee standpoint. Oh, and actually, let me back up because I went straight into this. Give us a little quickie intro if you want to kind of share anything about yourself before I, just totally take over.
Yes, we're good. I am Lauren Megrew. I'm a psychologist and a therapist, and I'm actually an industrial and organizational psychologist. I specialize in neurodiversity. And in my private practice, I work part of the time with organizations, helping them understand the reality of neurodiversity, how to better support their neurodiverse individuals so that they can be the best employer that they can be. Because there are some very significant barriers that neurodiverse people face. And if I can just take those out of the equation, I can do some next level shit. And most of us can. But when these barriers are there, it just takes away from my ability to go that 100% or to go the extra mile. So teaching organizations how to do that. And then the other part of my practice, I work with individuals across the country and around the world who, like me, and like a couple of us, made it to adulthood with having no idea that I was neurodiverse. Knowing that I was always the quirky one, the dramatic one, smart, but oh, that's just Lauren. It was my daughter's diagnosis that led to mine. And what I found so interesting is that the pattern did not stop there. it went up our family tree. And I could see all of these different generations where neurodiversity has been a part of the equation. We just didn't know what we were looking for. And it just proves that there are so many more neurodiverse people out there than what people anticipate. Because unfortunately, the stereotype is still very, very limited and looks absolutely nothing like me. But yet I am still here neurodiverse. So now I teach other people how to understand it, how to be the best versions of themselves, both personally and professionally. And then beyond that, long walks on the beach and a nice glass of French red wine. And that'll be like, the total.
Yes, we got a Bordeaux all day. And you're also writing a very sexy book, right?
I am. I just finished up the first draft. It's called Smart, Sexy, and Socially Awkward. And it's the insider's guide to the reality of neurodiversity in women. It is applicable kind of across, but so much that's the name of my book. This is the beauty of the ADHD component. When there's a text chat, I can't not look at it. So you're going to see it. Yes, I do neurodiversity all day, every day. Pretty much every fucking waking minute, I do neurodiversity in all these different ways. But you were saying, trying to understand the mechanism. Why is this stuff important from both the employer and the employee perspective? Like I said, from the employer perspective, you want to understand who your employees are dynamically so that you can utilize their strengths so that they can become the most effective things for you. But like I said, there are some inherent barriers that can impact my ability to fully give my whole self. And it's a very interesting mix that you can get if you teach the entire organization the reality of diversity and neurodiversity specifically. It becomes so much more effective to implement change, to augment productivity, to figure out succession planning and employee development and employee retention, just with a couple of more puzzle pieces than what most people think there are.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that and the work that you're doing. All right, so I'll get back into my question. So with process, right? So we're like, all right, we need to put processes in place. And given that this is what I do and this is my brand, right? I'm like, there's the part of me that's like, this is how things are going to work because this is how they work more effectively. And then there's like this part of me that's like, fuck the process, right?
Yes.
Right. So as the employer and the person who's, saying like, this is what we should do across the board because this is the most effective thing and it does work, right? So when you're adopting new processes with a team, right? Any sort of like things that you can point out that are positives and roadblocks from both, like when you're putting processes in place to neurodivergents who are either on the employee side or is a neurodivergent on the employer side. Kind of curious of both of these sides.
Okay, so we want to understand why the employees would want to, or why the employers would want to do this. Is that the first part of the question?
No. So we've decided process is the way to go, right? Like this is what we need to do, right? So how do we adhere to actually adopting process, right? Or what are the roadblocks to adopting process from an employer and then an employee standpoint?
Written versus verbal communication can be a very big thing. Auditory processing is a very unique phenomenon with neurodiverse people in a couple of different ways. And sometimes being able to zoom in to focus on just what one person is saying is hard because I have a brain that is going to notice everything in its environment. So I will notice every sound, all the lights, the different feelings of the things in my body. And they all could be potentially distracting or taking away from my brain's ability to fully focus on what's going on. So sometimes being able to make sure that you have things both written and verbal so that you have the two streams of input Another thing that's very common is the ability to create a transcript. So if you know you're going to be having a meeting where we're going to be outlining, this is what I expect everybody to do, this is what it is, a lot of people will stop after that verbal rundown of what it is. But if you can then provide everybody with the transcript so that they can check their own understanding and make sure that they have that information available to them to go back and reference as needed, could be a very big game changer. In terms of one of the things that can be very, very negatively impactful for neurodiverse people is anxiety and things that are unplanned. So when you're trying to implement new processes and you're going to be checking in with individuals, making sure that you set up a process where they know it's coming, where I'm going to be coming to you in 5 minutes. I need to talk to you about A, B, and C, and that's it. They get to find the stopping point in their work, which helps transition their brain. They get to organize their thoughts so that they can better articulate them when you get here in an organized and productive fashion. But what happens to a neurodiverse brain, usually because it is a social communication disorder, it's that as anxiety goes up, my ability to organize and articulate tends to go down in that moment. But it is never, ever, ever that I don't know what to say, or I am not capable of providing a result. It is that my brain wants to fully think about it, be 100% sure of my answers and the why before I communicate. And sometimes when anxiety is folded into that, it can take an extra second. It's not always corporate or societal culture to give people an extra second to finish their thoughts. It's expected that it's well, sometimes I need a second to finish processing what you're telling me. And if you give that to me, my anxiety doesn't go up. But if I know you're standing there and you're now, well, what is it? Well, just give me the answer. What's the problem here? My anxiety is going to spin and it's going to become harder for me to articulate the important findings that I have figured out. Because when it comes to the process improvement part, our brains are very, very good at it because it is all about recognizing patterns and understanding the parameters of expectation. So if a neurodiverse brain doesn't understand the full parameters of what is the expectation here, it could be very hard for me to start. So sometimes having that ability to ask extra questions in the moment before I start can be huge in my productivity. Because as soon as I'm good, I don't have a single question. I can engage.
Did I lose her? Did
I'm giving her a second.
Oh
no. Your internet just paused for 2 seconds.
Oh no.
So we got you right, I think, when you were like, my brain needs to, and then it paused.
Oh dear God.
For dramatic effect. I think that's what it was trying to do.
I actually think it was a universal confirmation that there needs to be pauses.
Yes.
Yes, this is all on purpose. Absolutely. 100%. So I don't know if anybody has ever seen the movie For the Love of the Game, but the pitcher, he does something, he says, engage the mechanism. And basically it's like a hyper focus. He can tune out a stadium full of people cheering for him, just focus on his thoughts, what he needs to do with no distractions. I can do that once I understand the parameters of the expectation and the organization of how I need to handle it. So if I can ask those extra couple of follow-up questions after I've organized my thoughts, I can then be the most productive and efficient person on your team because I don't need anything to be able to do what I can do. But I need the information that I need to be able to do it. And sometimes people don't like being questioned on, well, what, am I supposed to do this first or this first? Well, just figure it out. You're an adult. Well, yes, I'm an adult and I'm very capable, but it takes my brain extra time to figure out the prioritization and the organization. So if I can save that energy by just having a brief communication, I can then apply that to the task at hand. But if I have to waste that energy with anxiety and with trying to come down to how to ask the questions, I'm not as effective as I am. This leads to a very interesting point in terms of process things. When you have an employee that has ADHD, sometimes we talk really fast and then long run on sentences because everything runs together. So understanding different people's verbal processes is very important. If I'm talking very fast, it means my brain is doing exactly what it can do at the highest level, and I am trying to move along. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or talk over you, but it's just that energy that I can have sometimes.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And then on the other end, how do you start to recognize burnout in neurodivergence? Because I feel, and I've heard this from a couple of people, right? It's almost like they can't tell until they're in fumes almost. Like, are there other telltale signs of either as an owner who's going through burnout, or in your employees who are going through burnout? Because I feel like once they're in fumes, now your health starts to get into, like the rest of your body, it's not even your brain, starts to manifest. So are there...
From the employee perspective, it's a little more complicated because that depends on, that person's individual insight into themselves. Are they watching for their anxiety, for their productivity? From an employer standpoint, you want to look at their productivity, because as burnout, this high level of exhaustion that just takes over your autonomic nervous system, it really slows down your brain sometimes. And I can't think as dynamically and freely and quickly as I can because there's so much stress that is just like oozing out of my system. So if you're starting to notice that an employee can't do what they normally can do, it would be something to, say, all right, well, is there a way we can better prioritize your work? Is there a way that we can marginalize some of the tasks, or, help them with the organizational component? Because as the stress goes up, the ability to organize our thoughts goes down. So by helping them try to take on some of that, all right, well, let's simplify the organization and the prioritization of what you do have so that we can maximize your strengths, but not push you into the grave at the same time. And then as that level of anxiety can be mitigated, it will help them get back to their full potential because they're not continuously being taxed. Let's see. The way that burnout can impact neurodiverse people, it could be anything from the autonomic regulatory system, like temperature regulation, or how quickly my body will let me recognize that I'm hungry, that I'm tired, that I'm thirsty. And those things are already impacted for me on a daily basis. It impacts my ability to think creatively, I'm exhausted more. I am going to struggle to stay calm. Usually it would be I could have a conversation, but if I'm starting to encroach on this dangerous territory, it gets harder to, like, I can't, and everything is just, I just can't, everything is fine and I will be fine, but no, it just gets harder to be able to do what I know I can do. So, honestly, one of the best things an employer can do is to recognize and try to help support burnout if it is starting to happen. Because once the person is there, then you have to fight all the way back, and it can take a long time. But if we can help you, at least if you're teetering on the edge, not get pushed over, and then readdress the work organization and prioritization for that employee so that they have the ability to be successful. Because then if their brain only has one or two things to focus on, they can do what they need to do. But if I'm struggling to keep my head above water and I have the same amount of stuff on my plate, I only go down. And that's not where I want to be as an employee. That's not where you want your employee to be as an employer. if you think you have a neurodiverse, or you know you have a neurodiverse employee and they're really struggling, you could talk to them about what is their sensory environment. What are they working in? Are they working in an office? Or are they working from home? Do they have fluorescent lights on and a big bullpen area where there's stuff all the time and all these different distractions that they have to manage? It could be that if you know an employee is struggling with burnout, balancing a work from home, work in the office type of a situation. You know what, if you're really overloaded by this bullpen type of environment, let's put you in the corner and let's get you some partitions so that you can have some separation. If you are getting driven crazy by the lights, wear the damn hat. I don't care, because it cuts off half of your visual field, which means that I could potentially make it through my entire day without having to have a giant headache because of the lights. Because the other thing that happens as anxiety goes up, the sensory reactivity and sensitivity tends to go up. So by adding that extra level of flexibility for them to address their sensory environment could help keep them going into full burnout and then potentially being still a functional employee.
Yeah, super helpful. I have tons more questions, but I'm going to open it up to the group. If you have a question, just unmute yourself. If there's two of you, there's battle of, I will choose the winner. So just, anyone want to go first? All right, Jan, is that you? Because
I'm trying to give a pause because I jump in really fast, but I am really, one of the biggest challenges for me with my neurodivergent family members is that they are not emotionally warm and expressive in any version of real time. And I don't have a lot of time. So the inefficiency of their processing is a real barrier to our relationship.
Sometimes it is. And one of the things that can make verbal communication easier for me is by taking out the expectation of eye contact. It's another drain on my energy and my processing skills, because with the neurodiverse person, when I see a face, I automatically have to start analyzing it. I don't just know what it means. I have to go, all right, well, their eyes are doing this, and then they flared their nostrils, and their lips are smiling, but only one side. So does that mean they like it or not? And then they looked over there, and I don't know what that means. And then there's a shiny object over there that I noticed, and now I have to come back and figure it out. So when I balance my eye contact, it helps me stay focused. It helps me be more efficient with my words and more articulate, because I don't have to deal with that extra input. So it could be that. Now, and when you say they're not outwardly emotional, is it from the visual perspective, like they are very, straight-faced, monotone type of thing, or just the difficulty?
Last week, my son came up behind me and gave me a surprise hug, which he labeled as a surprise hug. He's 9, and it's the first time he has ever volunteered to hug me. It was super cool. And it was literally the first time.
Touch is hard sometimes. And it's a very weird thing to try to understand, because my sensory system is different every day. And even my husband, who I love dearly, if I am stressed and I've worked too hard, I leave my home office, he just wants to start talking to me and to give me a hug, heaven forbid. But what he's met with in that moment is like, don't. I just can't yet. I need to come down from everything that I was so focused on doing the day. And in 20 minutes, I take some time by myself, I take a breath, and then I can go out and I can be myself. But I have to be reactive like that because the feel of the touch is very uncomfortable and overwhelming for me. And it's very distracting for my brain. Now, sometimes touch is fine, but sometimes it's hard. And I will say that kids are usually way more sensory than adults are. And it's hard to kind of wait for it. You know, as an adult, I have a fully functional, fully grown and developed brain where I can process logic and importance and a different perspective. I have a different tolerance for sensory sensitivities. I know what I can handle. As a kid, we don't have that level of cognition or developmental ability yet to be able to fully understand these things. So it becomes much more of a reactive, hot or cold type of a thing. As an adult, I can get hugged by somebody and not have to freak out because I know how to internalize it and shut it down. I know what it's supposed to mean. I'm dealing with it. But sometimes it is hard. Do you have a lot? Now, is this just a family member question, or do you have clients that can have the same level of like emotional wall type of a thing?
Well, I don't know. I don't typically hug my clients. So we haven't quite gotten there
Yeah.
in my world. I work remotely, so I do see we have a technical group of people and they're emotionally all over the map. And so I do see that giving people some pauses really does actually help them a lot. That's a huge takeaway. And I do think I have been judgy about them not having responses in the moment.
We all are. I didn't know this stuff before I learned it and figured it out. But I can't do anything about the past, but I have total control over what I choose to do from this point forward. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know until we know. But then it's, what do you do from there? You know, I made it 30 years with having no idea that I was neurodiverse. You know, I didn't catch my daughters until she was 5. So yeah, it is hard sometimes to deal with this stuff, to pick it up. But what I found is that understanding the logic behind the why is what normalizes it. And it's the process part, what Juliana was saying, it's just the process part of the individual understanding of what neurodiversity can be. But it takes time. But you said that this was the first time that he hugged you. That means that he felt comfortable with you. He felt safe with you. And he voluntarily did it. For a kid that does not like being touched and does not often do that, understanding how profoundly beautiful that is, that in that moment he felt so calm and so connected and so just happy with you that he actually showed it. There probably aren't very many people in this world that he feels that connected and safe to, that he would let that happen. So even if even though we all have stories of being short with people, but we are more than just a collection of the things that we haven't done right. That goes for any of us. It's just what we choose to do from this point forward.
Lauren, and I have a piggyback question on the eye contact with the team, right? So if we know certain team members, right? So it's like the eye contact, the auditory, the verbal processing. Is it more effective to have certain meetings without video so that there isn't eye contact or not?
Depends on the person. Giving the choice, I think, is what's really important. I don't force eye contact, so I am 100% fine with video. Some people aren't as comfortable with it. Some people, it adds a lot of anxiety knowing that they're being seen because then they can feel judged. So I would say, giving the option to somebody if they really feel they need it and they can't push themselves to do it. Because I'm all about still personal growth. I have things that are really hard for me, but it doesn't mean that I can't do all of, some of them or can't handle it. It's just going to be hard. So helping them understand, all right, is this a big enough fear where it really is going to impact your thing? Or do you know with this client that having the visual component is really going to help them? And if that's the case, then how can we support you so that we can have this visual in and out, or, you know, checking in and out, something, so that the people who do really struggle with public speaking or that kind of stuff can get the support. But like now, there are neurodiverse people who can be in front of the camera. So it's not an assumption for all, it's the understanding that everybody's different and you are allowed to need whatever the hell you need to be the most effective you.
Okay, cool. Next question.
I just want to add something to that, if you don't mind, real quick, because I told Juliana earlier that this conversation is going to make me emotional for many, many reasons. I've worked with Juliana for 3 years today. We've known a lot of things about each other, but I have it's very hard for me to be on Zoom calls and look at the camera. And I actually just put something on the screen so I can look at the camera like I'm looking at something, so I don't have to look at faces, because the face things makes it so hard for me to actually, like, I have to look away from you in order to do this right now, to actually form the words in my head. It's like too much stimulation.
I love it. I love it. And it's one of the hidden benefits, I guess, for me when things turn virtual. When I do this virtual platform, I can put something else in the top corner where the camera is, and I can angle the camera right at what I'm looking at, so I can break back and forth between looking at the person and looking away so that I can keep it going. You're smart. You're good. You. Very impressive.
Very cool.
I'm all about the hacks.
Yes. Shalise. Oh, Lauren, did you want to add something to that before we went to the next question?
It's just a different type of a thing. Neurodiverse people can do very well with certain types of workarounds. I can concentrate better and work harder and smarter if I have at least 2 streams of input at the same time, especially because I have ADHD. So by, to make me the most effective, I want music on, but it has to be a very certain type of music, and I will listen to it on repeat over and over and over again. But it helps me focus. And if I don't have that, I am going to notice everything that is going on around me. Oh, the clock is ticking. Oh, that light is weird. Oh, what is that person doing? Oh my God, my clothes are driving me crazy. Oh, what was that sound all the time? So it's harder for me to focus. But it is not generally understood that if I have the TV on, I could be more effective than if I don't have a TV on. Or I had a client once where when she was able to Netflix and chill in work, she literally was 4 times more effective because it helped her better manage her anxiety, her streams of consciousness, and her attention. And then she could get into her groove and just blow it out of the park. But we couldn't just have silence. It couldn't just be that she heard everything that was going on. So having 2 forms of input can actually be beneficial to neurodiverse people at times, instead of what people will think is that, oh, that's a distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super helpful. Like, I know I'll have certain playlists for certain types of work. And that's very helpful. Like to onboard the brain. Shalise, you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to circle back to something that was being said earlier about working with either clients and or staff members who are neurodivergent. And especially as you've been giving examples with yourself personally, and then even with your own family about not necessarily, or like being undiagnosed for sometimes. So I'm noticing significant error rate increases with certain employees. And I don't want to make the assumption that they're neurodivergent, or it could just be that they're burnt out. But I've created spaces to have one-on-ones where I'm asking questions like, what is going on with you? Is there anything going on in your personal life? Like, is there anything I can do to help? And so I'm wondering, we're speaking kind of like with the understanding that we are aware of someone else's like inner mechanisms, whether that's diagnosed or undiagnosed. And I'm kind of just, okay, this is great, but then what if I don't even know that my employee, and she doesn't know either, and what I'm witnessing happening to her is either a form of burnout and or she's just neurodivergent, she doesn't even know, and here we are trying to do this back and forth.
One of the things that can be helpful is, instead of asking an open-ended question, ask a this or this, or, you know, between, is it this or this? Can we do this or this? And it helps with the anxiety. If I ask my daughter, if I said, do you want to go out for ice cream? You want to just go out? 9 times out of 10, she's going to just say no, because it involves a lot of planning, her having to make choices, making decisions where something's at stake. But if I tell her, we're going out for ice cream, we're going to jump in the car, she is the most excited, typical kid. I'm like, yes, we're doing it. This is awesome. Because she didn't have to make the choice to change it up. So instead of, is there something that is wrong? Or what can I do to help? It's, how has your organization stuff been? Is there anything that I can do that would help prioritize your tasks? Because I've noticed that there's a little bit of something going on. And, I know you're capable. Reassuring in that process, because when you were saying, well, what can I do to help? What can this be? My brain automatically went to, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Like, I'm doing something wrong and something is not okay, which makes the anxiety go up, which makes me think differently. So being very specific with the potential ways to help them, saying, I'm seeing that, you are struggling with being able to get things started. Why don't we try this and we'll see if it works? That way you can acknowledge this is going on. I still know you're doing good. You're not in trouble. We just want to make this a little easier and more productive. So instead of letting them tell you what's wrong, which is going to take a lot of personal insight and then that buy-in with anxiety, seeing what you see, not too many words at once, sorry. Analyzing to figure out what you see isn't working, or what you see that has decreased in effectiveness or efficiency, and then posing the solution and, saying, I think that this would be helpful. I know you can do this, but I've noticed that something is making this harder, I think, than it needs to be. What if we tried this? What if we tried this? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm in my mind circling back to something that Juliana posted in the Slack channel. It was the Positive Intelligence Saboteurs quiz. And I took that and have since been a part of their email list. And there was a recent email that they sent out where I started to see that same dynamic happen with this specific employee that I'm speaking about, where my top saboteurs are like perfectionist, overachiever, and then stickler. And so her being in like getting anxious is just making me more of a controller and stickler, because then I'm just like, sis, get it together. Mm-hmm. And then I'm harping more, and I'm trying to be more cognizant of the way that I'm responding in those moments. But then like, I also want them to be aware, and this is kind of where I'm like, yes, there is accommodations that I believe that I can make as a boss, as an employer, and someone who like really wants to invest in my team. However, I also feel like there needs to be reciprocal work on that end, because then it's really hard for me to then override what's going on in my brain of, are you capable of doing this? What's going on? I'm trying to pick my words very nicely here.
One of the things that I try to remember with my daughter, she's 10, almost 11, is when she is struggling or when she gets those wonderful prepubescent hormones, it is not it's not personal, it's business. She's not yelling at me, she's yelling because she doesn't understand what's going on. And when that happens, it is her nervous system that is going haywire. Neurodiverse people have a shorter path to fight or flight and more things that will ping against that reactivity. And if I can keep myself calm and more even keeled, it helps her get calmer, because neurodiverse people struggle to interpret tone. So the amount of times that I think my husband is pissed off at me just because I didn't understand the tone of what he was telling me. Same with her. But that also plays into another thing. Sometimes I don't pick up on the unspoken expectations unless it is explicitly stated to me. So instead of like, let's say I'm in a meeting with my team and then the manager is saying, all right, guys, I really need us to lean in on project A this week. My interpretation of that is to focus on project A, get it done right away, have it be perfect, turn it in, and then you're good. So that's what I do. But then my manager says, well, where's the rest of your work? You said focus on A, that's what I did, but you didn't do anything else that was on your plate. You didn't tell me to. I thought you wanted me to do this. I would have done it differently had I known. But sometimes I don't pick up on the unspoken stuff. If you want me to do it, explicitly tell me how you want me to do it. I told my daughter the other day, I need you to pick your Legos up off the floor. She said, okay. And I came back later and all the Legos were on the table. So I called her in and I said, well, what's going on here? I thought I asked you to pick these up and put them away. She said, you asked me to pick them up off the floor. And that's what she did, because that's what I literally said. So sometimes with that emotional reciprocity, tell them explicitly what you need to see and why it's important for this. And then, yes, there's the assumption that they can learn. Now, there's good employees and there's bad employees, whether they're neurodiverse or whether they're neurotypical. So there's always a line, because yes, accommodations, they can only go so far. It's not your job to carry somebody else. It's their job to carry themselves and then advocate when they need something different. But you do run into it. Sometimes people don't know if they are neurodiverse. They don't know what is going to be helpful. So being able to try things like this, that being very direct and explaining the why, because neurodiverse brains, once we understand the why it's important, it's easy to do, because then it's just logical and matter of fact. But if I don't understand the why, my brain's going to go, well, then what's the point of doing this?
Lauren, and so whether, so we're talking about in a work environment, right? You've got some neurodivergence, you've got some neurotypicals, and then there's still the level of performance, which I think is Shirley's, right? So it's like you provide accommodations, you provide direct feedback, and then is there anything else that is needed before you're like, this person is actually underperforming, right? Because I think that's a place where it's really important to understand, okay, like, what do I do to set this person up for success, on the spectrum of, neurotypical to neurodivergent, like, I'm going to do everything that I can. And then it's like, now you're fucking up. So where's that line of, like, you're setting them up for success, and then, okay, there's underperformance, right, that you have to deal with, whether it's a protected class or not.
Yes, absolutely. One of the big things with me is buy-in. Are they trying? Have you had conversations where it's, I've seen that this isn't quite working the way that I know you can do this, and I think this may help you, or, well, what if we try this? If they're not trying, and that is a very important line, because there's nothing that we can't do. There are a great number of things that we just have to do differently, but life requires motivation and buy-in and pushing yourself. So it's, you always want to see, are they trying? Are they honestly taking the advice? Are they trying to work with the accommodations? Has there been improvement? And if there's been improvement, that's worthwhile. You can create a secondary set of standards then, because you don't want to just have that one accommodation. We figured out what's working. Now let's keep tweaking it, because everybody is an individual. But if that individual is not trying and there is no thing, I'm a logic-based person, so my brain is always the rule of 3 because that's statistically significant. But if somebody can't try, I'm not trying. I can't do it for them. I will help them. I will support them. I will be their biggest cheerleader. But if they don't try, there's nothing I can do. It's one of those wonderful things they teach you in therapist school. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So neurodiverse or neurotypical, you have to have insight. You have to have a buy-in. You have to have work ethic and dedication. And most of us do. It's just that sometimes it's hard to know what's going wrong. It's hard to know how to ask for help. And it's hard to know when it's safe and when it's not safe to ask for help. In companies I've worked with in the past, I encouraged them, and this was a bigger company, create a support team of neurodiverse people. Is there somebody that can be a designated point person in your organization? So if this person does have a question on how is this supposed to work, or what is this, or is this the right or is this the wrong, they know where to go and they know it's safe to ask that person. Because just like you guys said, we are all trying to choose our words carefully. Everybody has a limit of what they can handle and what is good and what is not. But as long as they're willing to try, there's huge potential, because our brains are very, very, very good at certain things, and we can really knock them out of the park. Sometimes it's hard to find what works best and what doesn't, but by offering solutions instead of saying this isn't working, what's wrong, there's the potential to actually change it, get that person back on track versus that person going down the path to a potential burnout because now they think they're in trouble and they're doing it wrong and everything is just harder.
Super helpful. Next question. And
I could probably fill the rest of the time trying to be kind to everybody else. I may have a question here.
Yeah.
If no one does, I would like to talk about the difference between men and women who are neurodiverse in the workplace.
Okay.
And the complexities that come with that. I don't know if I have a specific question about it, just it's something I've been interested in for a long time, as a female myself with a family, and the overwhelming sense of pressure to be, all that implies, as well as the stereotypical expectations from women versus men in the first place, in the workplace.
So one of the things that plays into social pragmatics, which is something that we can struggle with, it's reading other people's emotions, but sometimes it's that we are the ones that are hard to read. I can forget at times to manage my face. If I am just thinking, and I'm thinking about something critically and analytically, I will just have this look of like, and it has nothing to do with anything. Now, if you're a guy, you tend to just get called, oh, he's intense. He's very intense. But because I'm a female, it's either that I'm sad, I'm mad, or I'm a bitch. But none of them is right. Look, see, I can smile. Everything's fine. Can we all just go back to doing what we were doing? Yeah, great, thanks. I can forget sometimes because what goes on inside is not always connecting with the outside in the same way. But men are diagnosed, or males are diagnosed at a rate of 4-to-1 to females. Across the spectrum, neurodiversity is still considered much more of a pediatric phenomenon. And apparently they just thought, like, when the clock strikes midnight on your 18th birthday, poof, there's nothing left. It's just all your neurodiversity is gone. But it still focuses on the pediatric male stereotypic presentation, not what I look like. And ADHD, just as much of a spectrum condition as autism is, but again, dominated by the pediatric white male presentation of what it's supposed to look like. So while there's a chance of having a male adult person who's aware of their neurodivergence, it is much less likely to find a female that has had the opportunity to understand themselves through the lens of neurodiversity. So it is a little bit hard, you know, some of this stuff people don't always know. Like I said, I made it till I was an adult, but there's a lot of the same patterns across all of us. Smart, capable, productive, great at finding patterns. Yes, we wear the same clothes, we eat the same food, we listen to the same music, I watch the same shows, but I'm still very smart, creative, but emotion plays into it in a different way.
Okay.
The stereotype with autism and emotion is that we have no emotions and we have no empathy. But for me and for a lot of females, at times, the emotion and the empathy could be so strong that that's what I'm struggling with in that moment. Because, like I said before, neurodiverse people have a shorter path to fight or flight. And when that gets triggered, my brain operates differently. My entire autonomic nervous system does. But what it also does is it diverts blood flow away from itself to our hearts and extremities so that we can either fight or flee to survive. But that means that no brain in that state has easy access to logic, because that is a higher level processing and organization skill. But as an ASPE, logic is my one fucking tool to understand everything. What does this mean? And how does it relate to this? And where's the pattern? And I got to solve the puzzle because I have to be able to figure out so I can predict everything. So that's why the anxiety component is so important to this, because when our brains do get triggered from a physiological perspective, they do not have the same capacity that they do when we are ourselves. So that's why staying out of it is so hard, because once you hit burnout, your entire autonomic system dysregulates and life becomes very hard. Basically, we're just so much cooler than anybody gave us credit for all of these.
And just for a little background, I am not diagnosed ADD. I am very certain I do have it. Apparently my dog thinks I do too. But I have 2 little boys that have it. And as a female in the workplace and a mother during COVID, and a lot of what you're saying is bringing up a lot of unresolved feelings from when I was in corporate, and the way that people kind of dealt with me and things that were perfectly logical to me was completely out of state for them. And anyhow, so that's kind of my background. And I work with a lot of females that are neurodivergent, and I have a lot of empathy for that aspect of it. So I was just curious on your professional opinion on that. So thank you.
Oh, you ever want to go down the right rabbit hole, you just let me know and I will take you for a fun ride down the rabbit hole.
Oh, your website's up here. There's a rabbit hole waiting. I also have 50 other rabbit holes, as Juliana knows. So.
Yes.
All right. I think we have time for one last question. Lauren, do you have a hard stop? I just want to be cognizant of your time. You do. Okay. One last question. Anybody? All right. If not, I will ask. Okay, go for it.
It's very simple. Lauren, when is your next workshop? Is one happening?
We'll talk about that, and we'll apparently have to figure it out.
One of the questions that I have, and then you could just, are there any management tools for the people who are neurodivergent, and I think I'll always like, neurotypicals can always benefit from, things that you say, kind of like listening to multiple inputs. I think that's a huge thing to make you more productive. So any kind of like your top tier, like leverage, like, hey, this really works stuff, that you would say is really great for productivity for neurodivergence.
Do most people on here, do they have clients that work from home, that are virtual? Are they in offices? Or is it?
I think right now it's mostly virtual.
Okay. Oh God, now it's just like what we were saying. You asked me to answer the open-ended question and my brain's going,
and that's okay. And that's okay.
The sensory component is a very big one and it is completely unseen. One of the reasons that me working from home is so great is that I get to wear the same pants all the time. I own them in like 5 different colors. I get to control the temperature. I get to control the lights. I get to take sensory breaks when I need to, because if I have a day where I can hear the buzz of electricity from my computer, I am going to be frazzled that day. It's going to be harder for me to think, to be able to deal with it, because there is a subtle frustration for hours that my brain has to notice. Even if it's not causing a visceral reaction, it's a cognizant distraction that my brain is dealing with. So, if it's in the office, looking at the environment, what type of an office are they in? Is it a bullpen versus an individual room? What's the lighting? What's the temperature? What can they do to be able to create a safe space within the office where they do feel that they can decompress, even if it's just to be able to get away, like having an escape route where I can close myself in for 3 minutes, not have to smell the bathroom potentially, because that's usually where you go to take the 3 minutes away. And to help with that. From at home, I would say 1, the visual video component, 2 is the prioritization of the work expectations and how to get it done, because there isn't always as much back and forth. So making sure that the clarity of expectations is there, and then also making sure that there's not constant interruptions. So some people have the systems where you can basically instant message people all the time and ping them all the time. That's great. But if I'm getting pinged 5 times in 1 hour, that is 5 different times my brain has had to stop thinking about what it's doing, transition to something else, and then try to fight its way back to being able to concentrate and focus. I think yes. But I would say those are probably some good ones. The clarity of the expectations, the prioritization of work, and then the sensory environment, and then just remembering the anxiety component of it.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you so much for dedicating your time to what you do and sharing some of it with us. So I just really appreciate it.